My favorite Overwatch League player from every team, 2023 edition. Let's do this. Atlanta Reign. On a team with many studs, there's almost too many names to choose from, but for the sake of what he's meant to Atlanta's run so far in this year, I'm gonna go with Chio. Maybe it's a little unconventional to find a main support player interesting, but Chio plays this game at a level that absolutely nobody can match. He is the perfect blend of what you're looking for in a main support player. His proactive nature and timeliness to keep Fielder alive is always so incredibly fun, and the fact that he's one of the rare main supports who can actually lift the load himself when it comes to playmaking makes you want to consider him a potential MVP, which is something you don't do often with the main support role. He dominates his position very hard, and he represents us support players very well. Boston Uprising. Not gonna lie, I love most of the players on this team, but one guy that has consistently been a joy to watch this year is Twilight. The Ana God himself that I've been watching for 5 years still has what it takes. And what I like so much about Twilight this year is how hard he has stepped up. When Izayaki went down with a collapsed lung, it was up to Twilight to be the new leader. And with how he has played, Boston arguably became even better despite being weaker in numbers. It's not super easy to claim playtime when competing with such a great player like Izayaki, but Twilight has gone out and he has done so with some of the most dominant Ana performances of 2023. Some of these games have been some of the best individual Ana performances I have ever seen. He is such an inspiration to watch. It is amazing to see this guy still doing this even after all these years. Dallas Fuel, Hanbin. Dallas have been on the downward trend this year, but one guy who has still given it his all despite all of this is definitely Hanbin. There's been some moments where he wills this team to victory on his signature heroes, showing that this guy is definitely still one of the best players in the league. His mechanics always seem to shine through whenever they're needed, and he's a strong performer in the clutch, and I respect his ability to make a difference even if the meta isn't always the best suited for him. Dallas haven't exactly been great, but I can't even begin to imagine how much worse they are without Hanbin. Florida Mayhem, someone. Admittedly, he's not quite as impressive compared to last year, but even so, I love this guy. Someone is one of my absolute favorite players in the league. He is one of the most flexible players in the game, and he usually shows up when his team needs him to. But with Someone, it goes beyond his skill. He's also just a very wholesome guy. He brings a lot of positivity, energy, and personality to a league that can sometimes be pretty toxic. This guy is dancing around, smiling, and talking with such enthusiasm about the game that he loves. He absolutely adores playing this game professionally, especially on LAN, and he loves his fans as well. Someone is a guy that I can respect as a player and as a human being, and he is an absolute giga chad. The Guangzhou Charge. I could be boring and just say Choi or Jimmy, but I honestly prefer Piggy right now. Piggy has grown a lot since joining Guangzhou in late 2022. He's improved a ton as a solo tank, showing massive improvement on the main tank heroes like Winston, for example. And while he still has work cut out for him, he's truly been a rock for the Guangzhou Charge with how he has managed to hold up against some of the more main tank experienced players out there. And something I really respect about Piggy is that desire to become a healthier guy. This dude has lost a lot of weight over the last few years. He has proved all the doubters wrong and has bettered his lifestyle. And now I've never seen him look so confident and happy. It's super inspirational stuff and I respect it. Hangzhou Spark, leave. We're now 2 years removed from his MVP season, and the man is still a beast. His Tracer has honestly been one of the best in the league, and I love that this little comeback arc that he's on is coming into fruition. Cause last year on Chengdu, it was definitely a rough year, both for himself and for the entire team, and people quickly began to forget that he had just won MVP. So to see him come to a team, a brand new one, and share the spotlight with some big names like Shai and Gushwei, and still be a main contributor is awesome. I had very high hopes for this guy to have a bounce back year, and he has shown the world just what he is capable of alongside Shai in one of the craziest DPS duos of all time. Leave has absolutely delivered, and we can certainly say that he is back. The Houston Outlaws, another team with countless greats to choose from. I could sit here all day long and praise literally any of these guys, but for the sake of keeping things moving, I'll pick Shu. This man's support play is absolutely off the chain. He is once again firmly in that conversation for MVP and is the top support in the game. His consistency across the last 4 or so years is borderline frightening. He's the best playmaking support in the game, period. Just an absolute machine on Baptiste and Ana, and a guy you can count on to turn fights all by himself. Shu is so incredibly entertaining, and he's got a swagger to him that really makes him pop out in a crowd. He is the definition of what a flex support looks like at its full potential. London Spitfire, Sparker. With Ryan taking a step back in the meta so far, Hottie just doesn't do it the same for me anymore. But one guy that I can always count on no matter what the situation is Sparker. Win or loss, this guy has been a freak on the Hangzhou. In their time of need, Sparker has pretty much been the only consistent aspect of this team, practically winning maps all by himself. The Swedish god deserves a lot of credit for making London at least somewhat bearable to watch this year. Take away what he has done for them, and London become one of the most undesirable teams in the league. I don't mean to make it a best player kind of thing here, but the truth is, Sparker is the guy who keeps me invested. LA Gladiators. Oh man, this one's actually kind of hard. I'm a big fan of most of this team, but for the sake of carrying on my tradition of showing love for former Valiant players pre-move to China, I'll go with Lastro. I've absolutely loved supporting this guy ever since his arrival in 2020. His support play has always been a treat to watch, and I have loved watching the evolution of his game. From flex support, to main support, to all-around player, Lastro has seen his fair share of growth, and he's arguably the best he's ever been right now. Lastro is perhaps one of the most reliable, yet underrated players. He has done a lot for the Gladiators so far, with some pretty notable clutches. There's a lot of awesome personalities and players on the Glads this year, but Lastro deserves a lot of love for doing so much of the dirty work without a lot of the appreciation. LA Valiant. Let's cut straight to the chase. There is one guy who even makes the Valiant worth watching half the time. It's gotta be the Canadian legend himself, Seeker. When this guy initially hit free agency last year, I was really hoping that he'd find a new home. He flashed a lot of potential on Boston, and I'm glad that the Valiant pounced on the opportunity. The Valiant is far from the greatest place to play from, but Seeker has made the most of it. He's continued to show brilliance on the hit scan role, this time as the team's star player. This Valiant team is completely built around his abilities, and I love watching them invest into him. Seeker is getting a well-deserved star treatment, and I hope that his time on the Valiant eventually translates into finding a better home in 2024. NYXL Creative. I've been pleasantly surprised by Creative this year. It was obvious that he'd be one of this team's best players, but I certainly did not expect him to carry this hard. Creative has gone through a lot the last year or so, but has continued to make the most of an ever-changing situation. This guy is determined to prove that he's still one of the best, even if it means playing on a low-tier roster like New York. And even with very little help at certain points, he's consistently been the best player on his team. His Kiriko has been lights out, oftentimes playing out of his mind just to keep his team in a game. And even if it usually comes in a losing effort, I gotta say that this guy deserves a lot of credit for playing with so much heart. San Francisco Shock. Oh gee, I wonder who I could possibly pick. It's such a hard choice. Sarcasm aside, Proper has by far and none been my favorite player on the Shock. And it's for the simple fact that most of the time, he's the only one literally doing anything. Most of his teammates, maybe outside of Junbin, have mostly been disappointments, and as a result, the Shock have often been kind of hard to watch. But one guy you can always count on to make things interesting, even in the darkest hour, is Proper. The carrying this guy has done to help this team avoid disaster is inspirational, yet very concerning. This guy is literally playing with so much anger just to avoid losing to teams like Valiant and NYXL. It's honestly ridiculous what this guy has to do to win games around here. He may not be the MVP of the league, but he's certainly the MVP of making the Shock bearable. The Seoul Dynasty. There haven't exactly been a lot of bright spots for this roster so far, but they definitely do have some big-time fan favorites, one of which is my guy, Void. At this current point in time, he is probably my favorite player in the entire league, and my favorite tank player of all time. Void hasn't been anything out of this world so far, but it's from all these years of watching him dominate that he's my guy. From LA Gladiators to Shanghai Dragons, this guy has paved the way for an all-time great career. His ability to contribute so much while fully protecting his team and playing smart enough to keep himself alive is a very rare trait. His understanding of this game is next level. Void's possibly the most consistent player to ever grace the game. I have been a Void advocate for years now, and I will defend him until the day he leaves for good. Seoul Infernal. In spite of their small size, Infernal have shown off a pretty good pool of players so far. But I gotta say that my personal favorite so far has been skewed. On the performance side of things, he's arguably the most impactful player in the East regardless of position. His clutches on the BAP and the Ana have made him borderline role star level. But the thing with skewed is, for me it goes beyond his play. It's his story that really makes this guy extra appealing. From coming off the bench and sharing the spotlight with Shu as a brig specialist to where he is in the current day is very moving. Skewed has gone through a very long road to prove that he is worthy of being a starting player. The fact that he's still here after literally 2 years of grinding is a testament to his skill and his mentality of never being satisfied. He is a primary example of what it looks like if you never give up. Shanghai Dragons, Viper. If it weren't for this guy and Hisu as well, I think that I probably wouldn't watch any Shanghai games. Despite being the rookie on this team, he has almost exclusively been the semblance of life provided when you watch a Dragons game. He has stepped into this leadership role at a very young age as a rookie player, and he has thrived. This dude came into the league practically as a Genji one-trick in this community, and has since then shown off an immense potential as a flex DPS. His Tracer in particular has been pretty eye-opening, and he's pretty much been the only real source of playmaking the Dragons have had, and he's now propelled himself into the scene to give you some hope that maybe he'll find a better job next year. It reminds me a lot of a young Flora in a way. Give this guy some help, and he might just be the next big thing. Toronto Defiant, Ultraviolet. You know, for a while I had my heart set on Sam, but with the sudden changes comes some improvising, and for me, the next best thing has been UV. In spite of a rough season for the Defiant, this guy has still been one of the top Western players in the entire game. His on BAP have been on point since the very first day, and you can always feel his impact even when Toronto suck. With how consistent he's looked across the board, it's kinda scary to think about what he'd be able to do on a real team, or on the other hand, if Toronto didn't have him. Be thankful for UV, ladies and gentlemen. He has been an absolute machine, despite the inconsistency from the main support position and his DPS. One can only hope that his efforts will pay off a bit more in the second half of the season with a slightly different roster. Vancouver Titans, Sugar Free. Easy choice here. Lenny is some of the best American representation this league has to offer. He's a great guy, he's a hard worker, and a sick DPS player. His ability to pivot onto whatever his team needs at a moment's notice and still pop off is absolutely insane. He is a shining star in this league, and it feels so good to finally watch him play. What new school fans might fail to understand with him is that it goes beyond the gameplay. A lot of OG fans have watched this guy play the game since he was 13 on Atlanta Academy, and even way back then, he was literally OWL caliber. We've been waiting a good 4.5 years for this, and there used to be jokes even that we'd see this guy in 2023 if he could last that long, and now that meme is actually reality. It's a dream come true. He deserves it for staying patient even after all these years, and it's one of the better stories that the league currently has to offer. Vegas Eternal, Dove. A no-brainer here. Outside of when Luke Mino played DPS, Dove has been the sole reason to watch the Vegas Eternal. He is the only player who has shown any semblance of life. He has tried his absolute best to carry this sad excuse for a team, but to absolutely no avail. And I kind of feel bad for him. He is obviously very talented and deserving of a spot in this league, but it has been wasted thus far on a horrible org, and I can only hope that now that their team is a bit different, that his impact can actually have some kind of meaning. Dove deserves a lot better for playing his heart out, even in a seemingly impossible situation where he's constantly finding picks just to lose fights anyway. It takes a lot of willpower to not just lay down and give up when looking at all the garbage surrounding you, no matter what you try. And I have a lot of respect for Dove for maintaining a good mentality. And finally, team number 19, the Washington Justice, and I'm going with Mirror. The DPS are really fun to watch on this team, but seeing Mir in the league still after all this time is a testament to his abilities. This guy, for the first 2.5 years of his career, was basically a specialist who would get thrown around all over the place. This guy with no real place as a consistent starter. For most of his career, he has been on all sorts of different positions in these very niche scenarios and has never complained a single time. Even though he's constantly been in these scenarios, he has kept his head down and has continued to work very hard. He just keeps on grinding, even when being bounced around from team to team like this. And now here in the present day, all of his hard work is finally paying off as a respectable starting tank in the league for the Justice. Mir's talent and intuition are better than most people out there, and he's a class act who definitely deserves a lot of praise. And with that, you now have your answer. That is my favorite player for every OWL team as of right now in 2023. Let me know your favorites down in the comments below, and if you enjoyed this content and you want more Overwatch League videos just like this, give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you're new. And until next time, this is ATP, signing out. Peace.